America. We need to shake it up a little bit and get back to the basics that make this nation so great. This man, a father of 5, a grandfather of 7, we were just spending some time backstage talking about family, America. A man who has a heart, who's proven himself in the business world. He, of course, yes, he knows how to brand. There's no doubt about that. He understands entertainment. He understands how to make a dollar. He knows what it means to be a part of the American dream. And so, ladies and gentlemen, a revolution is about to start in this nation that's going to move this nation back in its right course. And it comes from you, the American people, with leadership that will stand strong. I present to you the next President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Wow, beautiful. And the fire marshal is going to allow more people. We have hundreds of people outside. They shut them off. Now they're going to let them come in. So we broke the record, that's true. But they're going to let them come in. They'll have people standing at every door, and that's good. They broke the record, but they're all coming in, so thank you. You people got the best real estate, right? Thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. Mr. Trump, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And this is the Commander-in-Chief Presidential Forum. Thank you for being here. And, you know, as the governor was saying, we started this lecture series several years ago to work with the Wofford students, to bring great people to campus, open to the public, hear great new ideas. And people ask, why a Commander-in-Chief Forum? The reason the Founding Fathers and the states came together in the first place was to provide for the common defense of the American people, to keep America safe. And I can't think of and I think in this election, 2016 is going to be about electing a commander-in-chief who can keep America safe. And I would say this, I want to thank Dr. Bill DeMars, the chairman of our government department, did a great job. We've got some great questions from students we're going to be asking soon.
Right.
And why Wofford? Why Spartanburg? There's a rich history here in South Carolina and in Spartanburg when it comes to national security. Our people have an appreciation for what their forefathers went through to build this country, keep this in the freedoms we've got, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, which lets us be here. This is the place where Henry Kissinger became an American citizen at Camp Croft in the early days of World War II. This is where one of America's best secretaries of state, Jimmy Burns, did much of the work on the Manhattan Project. And this is the place where the Scots-Irish of the backwoods of South Carolina came together to defeat the British and turn the tide in the American Revolutionary War. This is the right place to have a Commander-in-Chief series. And Mr. Trump, I want to thank you for being here. And I would just start with that. This election is about electing a Commander-in-Chief to keep America safe. How do you view your role as Commander-in-Chief, and what best prepares you?
Well, it's so interesting, and first of all, this is a beautiful place. We drove in, I said, wow, I don't know, if I would have known about this, I would have forgotten about the Wharton School, maybe. This is really a special place and a beautiful, and I've met your headmasters, I met a lot of your professors, and you have a great group of people that really love what they're doing, and they love their students, so congratulations, everybody. It's really great. Your question is so interesting because it's evolving. It's changing. 2 weeks ago, I would have talked about trade, and I was talking about China and how they're killing us, and we all know that story, and boy, is that true. We're going to lose a tremendous amount of money this year, and we have for many, many years, because we have people that frankly don't know what they're doing. But we're now sort of pivoting. As of about 4 days ago, we're pivoting into other subjects, and very strongly, more strongly than I even thought. When I announced that I was going to run for president, which was not an easy thing to do. You know, if you're a successful guy, you do something, you really put yourself out on the line. And yet it's that kind of thinking that we need in the country now. We have to have that kind of thinking because what's happened over the last fairly long period of time, in all fairness, we just can't keep going on like that. But now, with what's gone on in Paris, and even today, as you know, it's been tragic, what's happening all over, I mean, all over the world, and they want to come into other locations, and they said they want to come into Washington, which means they probably want to come into New York, or they want to come into someplace else. Unlike our president, he says where they're going to go, that's where they're going to go. He's totally predictable. They're unpredictable, so when they say Washington, they mean some other place. But a lot of things have happened over the last few days that really bring it to a point where I'm more and more speaking about security, taking care of us, being strong militarily, always taking care of our vets, our greatest people, our vets, always. In fact, we put in a plan for the vets. It's such a great plan, and they love it, and everybody's happy because the vets have been treated very badly. In fact, illegal immigrants in many cases are treated better than our veterans. It's hard to believe. And you know, that's not just a statement. That's not just a statement. That's a statement of fact, and it's a disgrace, frankly. But we're going to straighten that whole situation out. But we're going to have a military that's so strong, so powerful, so respected that, and I say it all the time, nobody's going to mess with us. Nobody's going to mess with us. And so with what's happened to ISIS and with ISIS over the last few days, and it's been happening for a long period of time, we haven't done our job. We haven't gotten rid of them. And we can get rid of them. We can get rid of them swiftly, and we're going to get rid of them swiftly. But and hopefully, you know, hopefully this is not going to be a problem when I get there, if I get there. But if I'm the chosen one, hopefully this won't. Thank you. Appreciate that shout out. But hopefully this product will be eradicated prior to getting there. But if it's not, I'm going to take care of it very, very swiftly, believe me. It's going to be taken care of.
A week ago today, we saw the terrible radical Islamist attacks on Paris.
Right.
Last night, Mali. We now learn from our FBI director, he's got 1,000 active ISIS investigations right now in America in all 50 states. How do we confront radical Islam on American soil?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to be able to use the term. We have a president that refuses to use the term. We have a radical Islamic terrorism problem, and I don't know what's going on. Hillary was unable to use the term the other day, and of course she's very concerned that if she angers the president, she's going to end up being indicted. So, you know, she has to be very nice. She has to be extremely nice. She's walking on eggs right now. Boom, boom, boom. She's walking very gently. She is I thought that Democrat debate, it's actually the Democrat debate. You know, they call it the Democratic debate. It's not the Democratic, it's the Democrat debate. It doesn't sound as good, but that's really the name of it. Every network has it wrong. They call it the Democratic debate. It's not. But she, during the Democrat debate, I thought that was an incredible statement. You have the one guy who was the mayor of Baltimore. He shouldn't even be up there. This guy is. Then you have Bernie Sanders, who's sort of caught a little bit of an ear of something because it's a little unique. But, I mean, give me a break. This is not what we need. And his statement on global warming was incredible. The Paris attacks. And he was getting the second largest crowds. I have by far the biggest crowds. And this is a record today. Is that right? This is a record for the place?
This is the biggest crowd I have ever seen at Ben
this is
Johnson
a record.
Arena.
We've given
Ever.
Happy. I'm happy. I love records. I just love records. But, you know, when he really gave it up in order to get a good soundbite, when he dropped the whole thing on the emails, no, the emails, no problem. She's under investigation by the FBI, it's no problem. So he dropped that. And I happen to think that Hillary probably nothing will happen because I think she's being totally protected by the Democrats. I think that the party and the president is protecting her. So even though Petraeus was sentenced very severely, even though many people went to jail for doing about 5% of what she did, I think she's probably going to be their nominee and probably going to run unimpeded with the criminal investigation. I think it's outrageous because, frankly, what she did is absolutely criminal by every standard. You can look at many different statutes. But it'll be a big topic of conversation. At least if I go, it will be a big topic of conversation. But she's being protected, and that's not the way our country is supposed to be run. And frankly, I think it's a disgrace.
And here's a question, a great question from a Wofford College junior, Connor Jasso. Now that Russia has inserted itself militarily in Syria on such a large scale, how would you restore American leadership in the Middle East, or is it too late to do that?
Well, it's never too late, but the question is, what do we want to do? We've been tied up, and I believe, and I use this term, militaristic. I am the most militaristic person in this room, believe me. I know when to use it. I was totally opposed, most of you know this, but I was totally opposed to the war in Iraq. I said it's going to destabilize the Middle East. In 2003 and 2004, I was sent, actually, a delegation from the White House came to see me because they wanted to convince me that it was a good thing, because for some reason I get disproportionate publicity. I don't know why. And they had big articles that Trump was against the war. This is in 2003, 2004. Actually, 2004, Reuters did a huge article, Trump opposed to the Iraq war. But I just viewed it as something that we shouldn't be involved in. Why are we doing this? We're going to destabilize. Because if you look, Iran and Iraq were the same militarily, the same. They fight all the time. You know, that's what they do. That's all they do. Fight, fight. They fight. We want to do other things, right? So they fight. So they go this way. They go that way. They'd go this way. Then Saddam Hussein would throw some gas. The other side would throw some, and then they stop for a couple of years. Then they start fighting. I said, if you knock out one or the other, in this case Iraq, the other one is going to just take over, is going to take over whoever's left. And so what happens is Iran, as sure as you're sitting here, Iran now is taking over Iraq. Iraq, people don't realize, has the second largest oil reserves in the world. Nobody realizes that. Nobody ever talks about it. It's amazing. Immensely wealthy. They have the second largest oil reserves in the world. And I said, that's going to happen. I said, they're going to take it over, and that will be a disgrace. And beyond that, the entire Middle East has become a total mess with Libya, between Libya and everything, Syria. But they took it over, and I said, they're going to get these oil reserves. So then we go in, and then our president announces when he's leaving, which is a huge mistake, because now the enemy said, wait a minute, he actually told us a date when he's leaving. Let's pull back. Why should we get killed? You know, you read all about they don't mind dying and going wherever they go with lots of virgins, right? That's what they say, with plenty of virgins. Ay, ay, ay. But you know what? They don't want to die so quickly. Don't kid yourselves. They don't want to die so quickly. So they pull back, we leave, and then they go in, and it's a total mess. So Iran is taking over. And then, if you remember, so I said, don't go into Iraq. Then I said, well, look, you're in. Now, what Obama did was horrible because the way he got out. He announced a date. Date was a disaster. And then he got out. And now the whole thing's a mess. And I said, if you're going to get out, you've got to leave the troops. You've got to leave some troops there, which he didn't do. And this is how ISIS formed. This is where it all came from. Because the people in charge of Iraq were totally one-sided. They didn't take care of anybody else except themselves. And we have a mess. But I said, take the oil. Remember that? Take the oil. I'd always say it. And I was criticized so badly. I've been saying that for 2.5, 3 years. I say, if you're going to get out, take the oil. And they'd say, oh, what a terrible thing to say. That's a sovereign nation. Sovereign nation. So I said, take the oil. And they never took the oil. Then lately, over the last 4 or 5 months, I've said, break up the oil, because the oil is where ISIS is getting a big portion of its wealth. So I'd say, hit the oil, hit the oil. They'd say, oh, what a ridiculous. And if you remember, Obama had one of his military people on to say what a ridiculous idea. Well, 2 days ago, they started hitting the oil, okay? I said, you hit the oil and you take the wealth. So it's very sad what's happened. I mean, it's a very, very sad situation going on in the Middle East. And, you know, it would be really nice and another thing I said, Russia's hitting. Russia. Now, they just blew up a Russian plane. ISIS took credit for it. I believe that. I believe it was a bomb. ISIS took credit. And Russia doesn't want ISIS. So we're hitting ISIS a little bit. You know, we're doing ding, ding, because Obama wants to be politically correct, right? So we're not having much of an impact. I said, if Russia wants to hit ISIS, let them hit. And some people said, oh, well, They want to take the credit. I said, what's the credit? We've been tied up in the Middle East for so long. You know, Afghanistan's our longest war ever. Essentially, the whole thing is our longest war. It's all one big mess. But Afghanistan's the longest war. I want to rebuild our country. We have a country that's falling apart. Our infrastructure is falling apart. Our military is falling apart. General Orellana, the other day, I saw him on television. He said, we're the worst prepared that we've ever been as a nation, our military. The worst prepared. That's a big statement. The worst prepared that we've ever been. Because we're decimating military, and we're not even winning. We never win anymore. When I was growing up, we used to win. In fact, they said we never lost a war. Now we never win. We never win anything. As an example, to the victor belong the spoils. So why didn't we take the oil? You know, in the old days, people would have a victory and they'd take whatever they want. They'd take the country. They'd take the country. We spend, think of it, we spend $2 trillion. $2 trillion. Does anyone know what trillion means? A lot of people don't even know what trillion means. This was a word that wasn't used 5 years ago, 6 years ago. $2 trillion, if you think about it, in Iraq. We have thousands of people killed, over 5,000, but thousands of young, wonderful people killed. We have wounded warriors who I love all over the place. They're all over the place. And they're the greatest people. And we have them all over. And we leave. We just leave like nothing happened. We leave. And I say, to the victor belongs the oil. Why didn't we keep the oil? And nobody can answer. And then finally, 3 days ago, they start hitting the oil. It's too late. I mean, look, it's too late. It's better now than never doing it. But we should have done this a long time ago. If we had the oil, there wouldn't be ISIS, because ISIS is making $1 million a day with the oil. So now finally they're hitting it. And I said hit it because that's the source of their wealth. Another source of their wealth, though, is banking. I'm very good at banking. I'm a very, very good at but banking. They're being sent money through back channels and through very intricate banking channels all over the place by our so-called friends. Okay, friends. Wealthy friends, wealthy nations, they're getting them money. Now, I don't know because they like them or because they're afraid of them. It doesn't make any difference to me. But a lot of money is coming through intricate banking channels, and that's got to be stopped. And the people I'm running with, believe me, they never even heard of what I'm talking about now. They don't know about it. They have no clue, and it's not going to change. You have a senator in this place that doesn't, I mean, honestly, he's a very nice man, Lindsey Graham, doesn't have a clue, believe me. Doesn't have a clue. Although he's not doing too well on the polls, so I don't really care. I shouldn't talk about it.
Just a few years ago, the then FBI director, Robert Mueller, testified to Congress that in 1 year, this is like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we caught 59,000 people from countries other than Mexico illegally trying to come into this country. And these countries included Somalia, Yemen, Pakistan, Syria, you name it. What do we do to keep bad people and bad things out of this country?
Such a good, now I've been saying this. So when I announced, I said illegal immigration, I took a lot of heat. Rush Limbaugh said he took more incoming than any human being I think I've ever seen. He said that. And I never heard the term incoming as it pertained to the press. Those people, look at all those cameras rolling up there. Oh, that's beautiful. Hello, folks. No, but honestly, 30% of them are honest. Okay, 30. At a max. I don't know. But some of them are really good. But about 30, I figure about 30%. But I've been saying this a long time, and I took such heat. And a lot of it was what I said was misconstrued, and it was, you know, they take quarter sentences and they don't say the rest, and you saw what we went through. And honestly, we made the whole subject of illegal immigration the biggest factor in this whole race. And it was not, I don't think it would have been mentioned. I don't think it's a fact. I don't think it would have been even mentioned. And it became the biggest factor in the race. Everybody was talking. First I took heat. I mean, I was really taking, Macy's said, we can't sell your shirts and ties because we're going to have pickets in front. Mexicans are going to, I said, the Mexicans love me. I employ thousands of Mexicans. They love me. What are you talking about that? The head of Macy's, he said, we can't do this. Well, I heard they're going to picket Macy's. I said, so let them picket for 35 minutes. Then they're going to want to go get lunch, and you'll never see them again. It happens to me all the time. It's true. Okay? Donald, what do we do? I mean, Macy's was extremely disloyal to me, I have to tell you that. But some others. But you know what? I have to do what I have to do. I don't care. I have to do. And I brought up the subject of illegal immigration, big league. And then people started to say, about 2 weeks, took a while, but people started to say, you know, he's right. And then you had tremendous numbers coming out, tremendously poor numbers and bad numbers coming out about the crime wave is incredible. And then you had Kate, and beautiful Kate in San Francisco, shot in the back by an illegal immigrant. And we had so many others. Jamil, and a wonderful young student who was going to go on a scholarship, full scholarship, football scholarship. This is a great kid, great father, who's a friend of mine. And he was shot right through the head just by standing. He was walking home from a deli. He got himself a sandwich and his father. They were going to have a sandwich together. And this guy passed him and just shot him. Took out a gun, shot him in the head 4 or 5 times. And when he went down, he went like this, and he shot his hands off because it was a .45, and shot him right through the hands. I mean, the whole thing was so horrible. And so many other cases, illegal immigrant. And people started saying, you know, Trump might be right. He might be right. Now they know I'm right, and it's become a big factor. And you were just telling me how well he was telling me about the polls. He knew more about my polls than I did. Can you believe this? But you were just saying about how good they are. But I think a lot of it has to do with illegal immigration. And then, to get back to your question, you bring it to today, and a lot of people are viewing the whole Parisian disaster, which is just a horrible thing, but they view that as part of safety and part of borders and part of the fact that we're going to have borders, and they're going to be borders, strong borders on the southern border and everywhere else. And just to finish, we are going to have a wall, and we're going to have a big wall and a real wall. And Mexico is going to pay for the wall. I will tell you that. Mexico's paying for the wall. So when people saw that, and they understand now, a lot of the candidates that I'm running against are sort of coming my way. You know, I was out there by myself. Now all of a sudden they're saying, you know, I think a wall's a good idea. A wall said, 5 weeks ago they were saying, you got to be kidding. The other thing that's funny, and they'll never be able to do that because they're just politicians. They're all politicians. But when I say Mexico's going to pay, I'm not playing games. I'm not just saying that. I'm a business guy. It's like CNBC. They were going to have a 2-hour debate, and then they sold all their commercials for numbers that they never thought possible, and they made it 3 hours. And I said, you're not going to do that. And I protested. And within about 2 minutes, I convinced them not to do it. I said, that's not right. Who wants to sit for 3 hours watch? I don't care. I can stand for 25 hours and do a debate, but who wants to do that? And everybody said, oh, but you won't be successful, and if you call them, they won't do it. I said, they'll do it. They'll do it. Believe me. I got all the ratings anyway, so I said, I won't participate in the debate. And they said, okay, we'll make it 2 hours. Huh? But we got them down. We got them down, too. And the same thing with Mexico's actually easier. Because we have a trade imbalance with Mexico, $45 billion a year. The war's going to cost probably $8 to $10 billion, and that's super wall. That's not, you know, they were going to spend more money on a little wall like this where you just drive over it, right? You saw the walls they built where they have a ramp, and they built a ramp on the wall. They built the wall, and they have a ramp where the cars go over at 40 miles an hour, and they have the drugs. They're loaded up with drugs, and they just go over. We're going to have a real wall. We're going to have a wall. See the ceiling up there? That's about the height. Maybe we'll go a little bit higher. Believe me. We're going to have a real wall. And walls, remember this, ask Israel. Walls work. You know, in Israel, 99.7%. That's how it works, okay? That's pretty good. And they have a wall, and walls work. In fact, this migration, which is a disgrace that we could have allowed and other countries with their stupidity, but us, by destabilizing the Middle East, you have the migration. And now some of the countries want to build walls. And you know why they want to build them? Because they work. And we're going to build one. And if people go back, if the press goes back and looks, a number of years ago, like 10 or 12, people wanted the wall. And one of the reasons the wall was never built was they could never get, listen to this one, I'll tell you who'd like this is Bernie Sanders. They could never get an environmental impact statement approved. Can you believe it? They could never get, because a toad or something was in the way, probably a snake in the desert. But they could never get an environmental impact statement approved. Can you believe this? And then you look at China. They're building islands in the South China Sea. They're dredging that sea. They've got the biggest excavators you've ever seen. Not caterpillars, by the way, they use their own. But they've got the biggest excavators, and they're dredging the ocean. They're dredging the sea, and they're building islands in the middle of the sea. And I said jokingly to a friend in China, so how long did it take you to get the environmental permits? He goes, what? What? He didn't know what I was talking about. I was kidding. I have to say that for the press because they'll think I was serious. But what you'll read tomorrow, Donald Trump said that they couldn't get environmental. But think of it. We're at such a disadvantage with the way we do things. But we will get everything approved. We will build that wall. It'll be a tremendous wall. It'll be a fabulous thing. And by the way, so important, and I say it, that wall will have a big, beautiful, open door, and people are going to come into our country, but they're going to come in legally.
And that's,
he's doing a good job. No, he lets me talk. A lot of people cut me off. I don't like it.
that's a great lead-in to the next question from a Wofford College freshman, Jonathan Tokay. How do you secure our border without hindering or hurting trade in our economy as a whole?
Well, one of the things, and I always talk about, you know, I never really get to the economics of the border, but I do have to bring it up because it is an important factor. It's actually a great question. We lose a tremendous amount of business by having a weak border because business comes over. First of all, what is pouring over our border is drugs. You know, when we have this deficit, we're talking about having an imbalance of $40 or $45 billion, 40 to 45, and this has gone on for years. That's not including drugs. And if you look at the drugs that are pouring across that border, it could be a number bigger than even what we're talking about. It's massive. So we're losing a tremendous amount in that way. But what happens is we're also losing a lot of jobs because people are coming in, they're taking jobs that we could have for our people, and don't believe the number of 5.2%. It's nonsense. It's total nonsense. We have 100 million people in a workforce. These are people that want to work, many of which want to work. They've looked for jobs for months and months and months, and you and I were discussing it. They'll look for jobs for months, and they can't get it, so they give up. They quit. They give up. They say, I can't get a job. I cannot do it. So they go back, and now they're taking off the roll. So that this number, the 5.2, the unemployment number that you read about all the time, we're doing so well, the real number is 25%. Okay, that's the real number. Okay, and that number, in my opinion, and I don't even blame this on Obama, that was done years ago, although it's gotten weaker and weaker over the years. But that number was devised by politicians that wanted to make themselves look good. That's all it is. It's not a real number. It's a phony number. Every time I hear it, I turn off the television because it doesn't matter. They say unemployment went down. When I went to Mobile, Alabama, I had 35,000 people. I went to Oklahoma, I had 20,000 people. Wherever I go, I have crowds that are so massive. It's only restricted by the size of the arena, like this. I mean, it's literally only restricted. And I told somebody the other day, if the real number was 5.2%, I'd have 15 people sitting in the front row. It's just not. I mean, we have got tremendous problems. Our jobs have been taken away. They've gone to Asia. They've gone all over the place. They've gone to Mexico. Tremendous numbers of jobs have gone to Mexico. I mean, Nabisco is moving their big plant from Chicago. You know that story. I talk about it because I used to like Oreos. I don't eat Oreos anymore. Nabisco has a big plant in Chicago. They've just announced they're moving that plant to Mexico. And which is terrible. I mean, how does that help us? It doesn't help us. There's nothing that helps us. And they're actually incentivized to do that. Look, folks, we're run by stupid people. We're run by such stupid people. It's so stupid. Going to be the car capital of the world. We don't know what's happening. Mexico, in a sense, is the new China. And I'm saying this with great respect for Mexico. I wish our leaders would do the same thing. I have great respect for what they're doing in Mexico. And I love the Mexican people. But they're taking advantage of our people because they're much better, smarter negotiators. It's sort of interesting. Since I've been doing this, Carl Icahn, one of the great business people of our time, tremendously wealthy man, great negotiator. I know him for many years. Just a great negotiator, and others. But Carl endorsed me. And see, I call that a real endorsement. Some of these guys, they get endorsed by some third-rate politician that's been terrible, and they make a big deal. You get an endorsement from Carl Icahn. Probably never endorsed anybody before. But he knows that I know about corporate inversions, where basically companies are leaving our country, leaving the jobs, and moving to other countries. You know, it used to be where they moved from New York to Florida to avoid taxes or get rid of, you know, some of the taxes. But now they're moving from the United States to other countries. And it's an inversion where they can't get their money back. Also, they have $2.5 trillion, at least, in other countries. They can't bring it back into this country. And by the way, Democrats and Republicans both agree we should let the money come back in. For 3 years now, they've agreed. They haven't been able to make a deal. Washington is such a gridlock. You know, I use the inversion story to tell you that, okay, it's one thing when Republicans and Democrats, they don't get along, they can't make a deal. That's one thing. And there are plenty of things that they disagree on. But here's something, $2.5 trillion, I think it's much more than that, but it's at least $2.5 trillion is outside. This is money that's essentially owned by American companies. They can't bring the money back into the country. Politicians for years have agreed on both sides, almost unanimously, that it's good to have the money come back. You know, who could say bad, right? No, we don't want the money, right? It's ridiculous. They can't agree. For 3 years, they've been talking about it. They can't agree. And if that $2.5 trillion came into the country, more, but if that $2.5 trillion came into the country, think of what would happen. I mean, it would be a tremendous influx, jobs and everything else. But they can't even agree on something that they all agree to. It's very, very sad. And that's where leadership comes in. I mean, I would get them in a room, and I'll tell you, within 2 hours, we'll have an agreement.
The new Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, has said that he will not pursue immigration reform until after President Obama leaves office. Is this wise?
Well, you know, Paul was never strong on the illegal immigration subject, and he was always in favor of amnesty, which I'm opposed to. But he was always in favor. I mean, you look at amnesty, Carson wants amnesty, and although Carson's been hurt very badly because his own advisors said that we cannot teach him anything. He's incapable of learning. That's a tough statement, folks, okay? That is a tough statement. That's a very tough statement to handle. But Carson was, you know, he's very much in favor of it, and Paul Ryan and Rubio. I mean, you look at Rubio, he's the king of amnesty. He was a member of the Gang of Eight. And a lot of these people wanted to have very weak rules and regulations having to do with immigration. And now a lot of them are coming my way, and I don't know if they're giving that the credit, because I actually don't think that's, you know, I think it's one of the reasons, but I don't think that's the big reason for this, you know, very high poll numbers. But I think they're trying to take some of that by all of a sudden becoming tough guys on amnesty. Let me tell you, if they feel that way now, they're not going to change, and they can say whatever they want. But the people are smart. One of the things I've learned, and you know, somebody asked, what was the thing you most learned? I'll tell you, and I'm a little surprised by it, to be honest with you, because the press is dishonest largely. I mean, not all dishonest, but largely dishonest. And so therefore, you're reading a lot of dishonest things. I'll make a statement, and they'll cut it in half, and it means totally different if you cut it in half. Or they'll quote me. I have one group that actually just quotes me, and it's nothing. I never even said this stuff. So the press is dishonest. I have to tell you, I'm amazed at how smart the public is. The public is really smart. No, I really mean that. They really get it. And I think, somebody asked me that question, what have you learned most? What's been the biggest surprise? And I don't know if there was a total surprise, but somewhat of a surprise. The public gets it. They're really, really smart. They understand what's going on. And that's why the media has such a low public opinion. You know, they have very low of Congress, as they should. They have very low of a lot of things, but they have a very low. It's down in the same area of Congress. Somebody said it was actually lower than Congress. That's hard to believe, because I think Congress is like 8% or 10%. But the public gets it, and it's really impressive that they get it. So congratulations, folks. I mean, I'm very impressed by that.
And here's a question that's been asked by a number of Wofford College students. What would you do or propose as president to help American college students compete in a global world?
So it's a question I probably get asked, because when I go to colleges, I get asked so many times about that. You know, can you help us? And it's probably the questions I most get are from college students who work very hard. They borrow up to here, and they go through college, and they're good students. And the answer is, I'm going to create jobs. I will be the greatest job-producing president that God ever created. That I can tell you. I mean, I will be. I will. I'm going to have jobs. I'm going to take jobs back from China, and I'm going to take jobs back from Japan. I'm going to take jobs back from Mexico. I'm going to take jobs back from Vietnam, which is hot as a pistol right now. It's going through the roof. They're actually taking things away from China. But we're going to take jobs back from countries, some countries that you've never even heard about. And we're going to have our jobs here. We're going to have jobs. We're going to be free traders, but we're going to be smart traders. We're not going to have imbalances of $400 and $500 billion. You know what that is? $500 billion? And, it's an amazing thing. You'll have Japan, China, so they take our jobs. They take our money. They take everything, right? And we owe them $1.5 trillion each. Figure, how do you do that? It's like a magic act. And it's only because we have people that don't know. They were put there because they gave political contributions. They're hacks. They don't know. We don't use the great negotiators like Carl Icahn, like Henry Kravis, like others that I'll have involved. I'll use our greatest negotiators. And believe me, when they see like a Carl or others that I know the best in the world, and they see these people coming, they'll know the game's over. Game's over. They'll do fine, but the game's over. I mean, think of what that means when somebody's got an imbalance, where we are imbalanced by to the tune of $505 billion. Supposing I cut it in half, I'll do better than that, believe me. I don't want to lose $200 billion either. But can you imagine cutting, what does that mean? That's so incredible. The difference would be so great. So we're going to have the greatest negotiators in the world, and we're going to create jobs so that when you graduate from this school, you're going to have jobs. You're going to have jobs. You're going to have victories, too. You're going to have a lot of victories. We don't have victories anymore. We don't win anymore as a country. We don't win at anything. We don't win with ISIS. We don't win with the Iran deal, one of the worst deals I've ever seen negotiated. I mean, I should have had our governor negotiate that deal. That would have been a lot. But you know what? We don't win with anything. We don't, I mean, when was the last time you see victory? We lose on trade. We lose on the war. I tell people, I say, we have generals. I was a great admirer of George Patton. He was not politically correct at all, but he was rough and tough and smart. And I was a great admirer, a very different type of guy, of Douglas MacArthur, General Douglas MacArthur. These were great people. These were great men. You know what? We have people like that. Right now, we have people like that. But we're not using them. We fired one of our great generals. I won't mention his name, but we fired one of our great generals because he was a rough guy, really good. Everybody said he was good, but he was very rough and used a lot of foul language and stuff. So did Patton. Patton was brutal. You couldn't even talk to the guy. You'd never have your wife in the room with him, okay? It's true. He was brutal. But these were great generals. And now what do we see? All the time I watch the shows. I see generals always being interviewed. And they're telling things. I say, I don't think he should be saying that. I don't want the enemy to hear these conversations. It's just ridiculous. So we will be creating jobs, and the biggest thing I can do for colleges, and I say it all the time, more important than anything, we're going to do something with the loans, because the loans are really choking everybody. We're going to do something. And we're going to do something good. You're going to be helped. It's one of the few things that the country makes money on, believe it or not, is the loans, because they pay a lot of interest, and that's something that really, it's a good thing for the country to be doing. But that's one of the things that's one of the few things that they do well at. And what's happening is a lot of students are just choking with it. So we're going to work on that big league, and we're going to do something about it because we have to. Very important. But the biggest thing I can do is create jobs. So when you graduate, you get a great job, and that's going to happen, believe me.
That's a good tie-in. You mentioned the Iran deal. We have a great question from Nick Reitzel, who's a Wofford College freshman. How would you renegotiate the Iran deal, or what deal would you propose if you were to start over?
So my whole life has been contracts. My whole life, that's what I've done. My father said he's the greatest I've ever seen. That's a nice, he's my father, but he was a tough cookie, okay? And my whole life has been contracts. And I buy deals where some poor guy made a bad contract. And I'll buy it cheap because it's a bad contract. I buy cheap. I like to buy cheap. And I'll renegotiate the contract. Nothing wrong. I'll call the bank. I'll throw it into a chapter. I mean, I've done deals where I buy something. A friend of mine was in big trouble. So I said, what do you want? He said, could you help me? I said, what? He said, I have a bank. So I knew the bank. So I called the bank. I said, do me a favor, help the guy. He's dying. So the bank said, Donald, we won't do it. I said, well, then I may, it's a good company, actually, but he's got the wrong borrowing and he's got a bad deal with you guys. I may buy it, but if I do it, it's going to be rough on you people. They said, no, don't do that, but we're not going to do anything for him. We're not going to do, and they didn't think I was going to buy, just like they didn't think I was going to run for president. Everyone said he's never going to run for president. Then he runs for president. They said, oh, yeah, and now look what they have. Look at the mess. I mean, all these pundits are saying, what happened, right? But I said, no, I'm going to buy it. They didn't think I'd buy it. So I ended up buying for a very small amount of money this good company because it was choking. He was choking. I called the banks. I said, I bought it. And they said, well, we're not going to do anything. We told you. I said, that's okay. I put it into a chapter. I broke their asses. I broke them down. I ended up making an unbelievable deal. They were begging me, can you do this, that? Actually, somebody said, he filed for Chapter 11. That's a business tool for guys like me and for other people like me. There's a group of us. We're very good at what we do. But I take bad contracts, and I make money with bad contracts. I like bad contracts, as long as I don't sign them, as long as I don't do them. But you buy them cheap. So we have one of the worst contracts I've ever seen negotiated, the Iran deal. We get nothing. We get nothing. We've taken a terrorist state. We've made it extremely rich, extremely powerful. We don't even get our prisoners back. We have 4 hostages that are wonderful people. I call them hostages because that's what they are. And Kerry, who's a total novice, he's like a baby. He's our Secretary of State. That's what I mean about the people we have. He's like a baby. He makes this deal. And they were asked, why didn't we get our hostages? We're giving them $150 billion. You know what? They don't have to worry about nuclear weapons. They don't have to make them. They can buy them. They got so much money. They'll buy them. They'll have them tomorrow. We are so stupid. So we're giving them $150 billion. We're giving them, the greatest is the 24-day, but even greater than that, in some cases they self-inspect. You know about that, right? They do their own self-inspection. And we don't get our hostages back, and there's many other things that are very bad. And it's one of the worst transactions I've ever seen negotiated. I'm not talking about between state and state or between country and country. I'm talking just as a deal. It's one of the most incompetently drawn deals I've ever seen. We get nothing, and we give them back. And by the way, if I were doing it, I would have said a couple of things. First of all, you've got to give us our prisoners back. They would have said no. And I would have said, thank you, bye-bye, bye. And then I would have gone out. There's nothing wrong. Oh, I know you have some business students here. There's nothing wrong with walking. Some of the best deals I've ever made, I've walked away from like 4 times, okay? Like, bye, bye, bye. And they call back. You say, all right, and you get, or at least you get something. We just stay. They refuse to leave. Do you know Obama would have looked great if he terminated that deal? He would look so smart. If he would have walked, I would have said, wow, that's great. He walked. People in this room would have said, great. We wouldn't walk. We'd ask for something. They'd say, no. Oh, okay, we'll take it. We're run by incompetent people. So why didn't we get our hostages back? Kerry said, we didn't want to ask for them because we didn't want to complicate the negotiation. No, think of it. That was the reason. They didn't even ask for the hostages back. I would have said, just as a difference, I would have said, fellas, listen, we want the hostages back. Got to get them back. You don't want them. You don't need them. Your people don't even know you have them. Our people, we want them. And it sets a nice tone for making a deal. Okay? It's good for you. You don't need them. They don't do you any good. They're in one of the roughest prisons in the world. One's in there because he's a Christian. He's in there because he's a Christian, which, Governor, I don't think you're happy with that one, right? He's in because he's a Christian, the pastor. And I met his wife a couple of times. She's so lovely. She doesn't know what to do. And she says gets no cooperation from the government. So here we give them $150 billion, and they're in there, and we don't get them. So if we would have walked, they would have called back. We would have doubled up the sanctions. They would have called back. I guarantee you, you walk and double up the sanctions. I guarantee you within 24 hours they're calling to get back to the table. The hostages come out. That should have happened before we even started negotiating. But so many other things. So the question is, though, what do you do now? Because we got a bad agreement. And the worst part of the agreement is the money will be gone by the time, assuming I get there. The money's gone before I get there. Okay? That's a bad thing. The money is gone before I get there. So what's going to happen is I will take that horrible deal and I will figure something out, because that's what I do. There's always a bad clause for the other side in a really bad contract. I've seen contracts that are so one-sided and so horrible, But there's always a clause, there's always something. And I will do numbers on them that you're not going to believe. And here's the other thing. You know, a couple of them said, I will avoid the contract. You know, a couple of the people running against me, you know, tough guys. They're going to avoid the contract. Believe me, not so easy. I will avoid the contract, yeah. You look at some of the guys, you know who the guys I'm talking about. You know where they are right now? They're at zero, most of them. But there's always something in there. But I'll tell you one thing that will happen. Before I take office, if I win, before I take office, our prisoners will be back. I guarantee you that, before. Because they will know that if those prisoners are not back on our land by the time I take office, they're going to have hell to pay like they never paid before. And I will tell you. So those prisoners, they should have been back, by the way, they should have been back years ago, but they will be back before I take office.
Yes, yesterday, the president said in the Philippines that Syrian refugees are no bigger threat to the U.S. than tourists. And I want to quote the president. He said the idea that somehow they pose a more significant threat than all the tourists who pour into the United States every single day just doesn't jive with reality. Your thoughts?
I mean, do we really even have to answer that question? It's incredible. A friend of mine and a man who's actually considered one of the top, look at the people who are still pouring in. This is crazy. You guys really know about real estate. You got all the good locations, but they're still coming in. A friend of mine who is a real expert on national security told me something that shocked me. This was 2 years ago. This was before all of this craziness is happening with the migration, which is a very sad thing and all, but just crazy what's going on. He said that if you are a Muslim and if you are in Syria, so you're a Syrian Muslim, it's one of the easiest places in the world, under Obama, it's one of the easiest places in the world to get into the United States, to become, to get in. I guess to become a citizen, but to get in. So if you're a Muslim and you're from Syria, it's really easy. One of the easier places in the world, okay? Listen to this one. If you're a Christian and you're from Syria, now these are people having their heads cut off. So these are people that if we're taking anybody, let's help these people. If you're a Muslim, I'm not saying it's great to be to be over there. But if you're a Christian, you're in deep trouble. They're chopping off your heads like forget it. James Foley, I'm friendly with the parents, are great people. It started with James Foley, who's an amazing guy, head chopped off. We never saw this before. It's like medieval times. So if you're a Christian and you're from Syria, it's almost impossible to get in to this country. Now think of it. So who sets that parameter? I assume it's the president, but who sets the parameter? Who tells his people that, listen, we want Muslims coming into the country, but we don't want Christians coming into the country? Now this is one of the people that knows. He's a great national security expert. And I didn't believe it. I said, you got to be kidding. No, it can't be possible. Turns out to be true. So if you're a Christian from Syria, it was virtually impossible. But if you're a Muslim, it was one of these. So we have a bad tone going on. I always talk about tone because Jeb Bush would always say, Donald Trump's tone is a little bit tough. I don't like it. It's not nice. They got people chopping heads off, and he's worried about my tone. Twitter and Facebook. Actually, I won't say. Somebody said I'm the Ernest Hemingway of 140 characters. Can you believe it? I was actually given that credit. And I do mostly do it myself. Sometimes I'll dictate to a secretary, in the middle of the day. I'm not going to always, I'll say, bum, 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 put it out, at real Donald Trump. Everybody immediately sign up, at real Donald Trump. Costs you nothing. What the hell? You're not going to lose anything. Have it. But I've got almost 5 million people, and going to soon have way over 5 million people, because we picked up, I think last week, over 100,000 people in a short period of time, and we're picking up a lot. And it's fun. And, it's like owning the New York Times without the losses. It's tremendous. It gives you a lot of power. If somebody says something badly about you, in the old days, I wouldn't know. I'd go, cool, I'm going to get that guy. But now I just say, oh, I said something bad. Bing, bing, bing. I say really bad about that. And then all of a sudden, it's amazing. But what has happened is ISIS, and Facebook incredible too, and we're doing great on Facebook, almost 5 million on Facebook. But I will say that ISIS has really done incredibly well with the whole social media thing. I mean, beyond anybody probably ever. And it was our baby. I mean, we're the ones that developed it and founded it and birthed it, and we're the ones that did it. And ISIS is the one that has really taken it, and they brought it to a new level. Now, again, knock out their wealth, knock out their fields, knock out the oil, et cetera, stop the banking, which nobody but me will know how to do. I'm the king of banking. Oh, am I good at banking? Do I know how to deal with banks? Ay, ay, ay. Those poor banks, when they're sending them money, we got to do it. But I will tell you, we have to do something. It's such a, I love this question because I understand it. I understand social media. I understand Twitter. I understand the power of Twitter. I understand the power of Facebook. Maybe better than almost anybody, you know, based on my results, right? So I see the press yesterday, and they're talking about this thug, this bum, this dirty, rotten bum with a big dirty hat on, with the filthy clothing. That was when he took a good picture. That was the picture he gave out. And they're calling him the mastermind, right? The mastermind. We're looking for the mastermind. The mastermind. He's not a mastermind. He's probably got an IQ of 90, 70, 80, 90. He's not a mastermind. But the press is talking about, and you know, I don't think they're doing it, I don't know, maybe they're doing it because it's more exciting to do it. But they're talking about a mastermind, that he's this brilliant guy. He's not a brilliant guy. He's probably not a smart guy. He's tough, thug, but he's not a smart guy. And I tweeted over the last couple of days, don't call these guys masterminds anymore. Don't call them masterminds. Because what's happening, and you know what, today I didn't see the mastermind anymore. It's amazing, the power of this stuff. But I didn't see it. But I said, what you're doing is you're creating this Robin Hood kind of an incredible image. And our youth is, you know, they're susceptible. And they're reading all these stories about this brilliant guy who escaped. Well, it turned out he didn't escape. His body was all over the wall, right, in the form of blood and bones. But, and by the way, the French police, I think, did a very good job. I think they did a very good job. I got to say. I think they did a hell of a job. That's not easy. You know, you have people with bombs wrapped around their body, and that was not easy, so I give them a lot of credit. But I said to the media, and I'm doing it on Twitter and Facebook, don't call them masterminds. Call them thugs, call them losers. I said, call them losers. Call them whatever you want. But don't call them glamorous terms. They're not glamorous people. What is a mastermind about sending a few stupid people into various places in Paris going bang, 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 boom, boom. And one other thing while we're on that subject, Second Amendment, okay? You know what I'm going to say, right? So you had hundreds of people in those rooms, those various rooms, especially the big dance hall. You had hundreds of people in those rooms. Paris and France have probably the toughest gun laws in the world, from what they say. Okay, and we have tough gun laws here in some places, and by the way, they're usually the places that have the biggest problem. But Paris and France have the toughest gun laws almost in the world. So out of all of those 5, 6, 7, 800 people, there wasn't one gun. The only one that had the gun were the thugs, were the stupid people, were the losers. They were the only ones that had the guns. And they went in, and you heard the reports, the same reports of people that survived. They'd say, over here, boom. Over here, boom. Move over, boom, boom, boom. So they killed almost 150. Many more will die because you have 370 in the hospital, many of which are expected to die. But they just moved them over, boom. You know what? If I'm in that room and let's say we have 2 or 5 or 40 people with guns, we're going to do a lot better because there's going to be a shootout. There's going to be a shootout. We're going to do a lot better. These people were helpless. They were helpless. We would have been helpless too if we were sitting there without a gun. I actually have a right to carry. I have a pistol right to carry. these people would have been they were absolutely helpless. If they had some guns in that room, they would have been so much better off, and it would have been a much, much different result. So I say that, just in finishing, but I say that because our Second Amendment is a very, very important thing. It's a very good thing. Remember that.
Mr. Trump, I want to thank you for being here, and I know the Wofford College students and the people of Spartanburg, South Carolina want to thank you for being here.